The original 2019 Shazam was a solid high-concept idea. What happens if you mixed big with a superhero movie? The story of a kid who can transform into an adult, but keeps kind of the wide-eyed optimism and wonderment of youth, all while lacking in years of experience and maturity. It is a simple and easily reusable idea within different genres. And for the most part, the original Shazam nails this concept, delivering a movie with the big blockbuster action sequences, but has the comedy of a kid in an adult body and just the right amount of heart. Such childlike optimism was also a welcome breath of fresh air for the DCU, which for that time was going for this very dark and gritty aesthetic. And I'm not going to try and claim that everything in the original Shazam was perfect. There were some issues. Some people have found a disconnect between Zachary Levi's Shazam, just his overall goofiness, and Asher Angel's more moody foster kid. But the dichotomy between these two ultimately worked, with Levi's Shazam being the main action hero and comedian, while Angel makes things more relatable to kids and generates some genuine sentimental emotions. It worked as this comedic kind of kids romp that served as a power fantasy, but it was also something that adults could enjoy as well. Unfortunately, a sequel really didn't seem like much of a priority to the studio at the time. It did modest box office numbers, but nothing to make the studio executives really itch to get another into production immediately. This was additionally compounded by COVID causing production complications through 2020 and 2021. As a result, Shazam! Fury of the Gods did not hit theaters until a further 4 years after the original. Now, for most movies, this wouldn't be a problem. 4 years really isn't that extreme of a break between sequels. Look at Thor: The Dark World and Thor: Ragnarok. But it is important to remember that the original Shazam had that high concept idea, and it served as its launchpad. And this is a concept that the film is ultimately forced to abandon, due to the fact that the child actors are now in their 20s. The inevitable problem that every kids franchise has to face is the studio pipeline and the slow creep of time itself. Movies take a while to produce, film, and release, and kids grow up fast. Just look at the Harry Potter franchise. Often, I'd say usually, the next in the series was filming before the current one was even released. This is because WB realized that they needed to pump these movies out as fast as possible to keep the kids the appropriate ages so as to be believable that they are only really a year older than the previous entry. You can argue if they were successful. Eventually, these kids did surpass their book counterparts in age, with Daniel Radcliffe being 20 years old while playing a 17-year-old in the final entry. Yet Harry Potter was a tested and proved franchise even before bringing it to film. It was a global phenomenon. Confidence in a Shazam movie was not nearly as high. But the producers and filmmakers over at DC should have known better. After the film performed reasonably well and hit it off with fans and critics, they should have had another one in the works immediately. Because let's be honest here, a kid turning into an adult Superman-esque figure, that's a gripping and unique idea. But a 20-year-old transforming into a mid-40s hero doesn't quite have the same ring to it, and probably is edging a little closer to unintentional comedy. And the production company knew it. When you look at the marketing for Fury of the Gods, in the ads and the trailers, you'll see that they're repeatedly showing old clips from the first movie of Billy transforming into Shazam, because it's more visually dramatic. It's made worse by the fact that Ansel Angel, unlike someone say like Tom Holland, who, has this eternal baby face, Angel actually looks his age. He looks 20. At least his co-star, Jack Dylan Grazer, who plays the character of Freddy, is more convincing playing a younger character than he actually is. This could, admittedly, be due to Grazer also being a stronger actor who in general, at least in my opinion, completely carries this movie and is certainly trying his hardest to elevate this material. But Angel, though maybe not the strongest actor, was the heart of that first movie, and in this sequel, he's completely sidelined. I'd say he is probably in only about 5 minutes of the runtime, if even that. This is likely because the filmmakers hope you'll probably forget how old he actually is. But by losing Angel, and frankly most of the child cast for that matter, as they all have significantly reduced roles due to the fact they all have now adult counterparts, I'd say this deprives the film of most of its emotional core, and that was really what helped make the first one click. And Fury of the Gods really doesn't even try for the pretense that these older actors are now playing younger characters, probably for good reason, and it just goes and makes Billy's in-film age at nearly 18. Again, to return to an old example, this would be like making a sequel to Big and having the kid be a full-grown man who still transforms into an even more old Tom Hanks. I mean, if anyone can sell it, probably Tom Hanks can. But this is witnessing a high-concept idea completely implode in on itself in real time. And fans of the comics may say Billy does get older in the comics, and fair enough, but within the film, that big age discrepancy is the main narrative draw from which it pulls most of its comedy and moments of drama. And I'd say even the comics recognize this because typically they do keep Billy between the ages of 10 to 14 years old. And maybe there was a way to make this work. Maybe having Billy leave his childhood behind could have been more of a theme. The screenwriters certainly seemed like they wanted to dive into this idea, but never really scratched the surface more than Billy being worried about leaving his foster family after he leaves the system at 18 years old. And Zachary Levi seems to have not gotten the memo at all. Now don't get me wrong, I still find him funny and charming in the role. But remember that character disconnect I mentioned at the beginning of the video between young and old Billy? Well, explode that now tenfold. Levi has completely failed to age this character up with his in-universe counterpart. He's still playing Shazam as if he's this 10-year-old boy in an adult body, when really, he's an 18-year-old kid now. This seems less like a kid joyfully enjoying a power fantasy and looks more like Billy is losing brain cells after transforming and becomes just like this goofy idiot. And yes, I know this was shot during COVID, but were Levi and Angel even in the same room together to compare notes? It's as if they have no idea how each other are playing this character. Now let's compare this back to the Addams Project, where Ryan Reynolds and Walker Scobell nailed playing the same character in two different bodies, or at least at two different ages. They were successful in capturing each other's different mannerisms across different maturity levels, regardless of what you thought of the actual full film itself. The same cannot be said for Angel and Levi's performances. Now there's a lot to be said about this movie that I could complain about. I could talk about the meandering second act followed by the third act that overstays its welcome, and the ending that is a literal deus ex machina. I could talk on the long list of hit-and-miss jokes, mild pedophilia, and some of the most just shameless product placement I have ever seen. Or alternatively, I could speak on the good, a lot of the funny, genuine moments, Levi being entertaining as ever, and the character of Freddy basically propping up the entire movie on his comedic chops and carrying all major emotional beats. But to me, none of those things, good or bad, really matter when you compare it to how catastrophic it can be when a high-concept plot is completely at a loss of where to go or how to proceed, all because the studio completely failed in being timely. But in doing so, they left this franchise a hollowed-out shell of its former self. This is textbook striking while the iron is cold. It fails to build on the momentum and goodwill of its predecessor, and sits on a well-received property for so long that the foundation for its existence becomes obsolete. But those are just some of my thoughts on Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Otherwise, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. As always, keep those reels turning. Thank you.